I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. I think our greatest competitive advantage in the age of AI isn't faster data, but deeper wisdom. So does my guest in my next episode of Leadovation. I sit down with Maurice Jenkens, founder of Intuitive Leader based in Sweden, for a conversation that strikes at the heart of a question that I've been exploring for years. What role does intuition play in modern leadership? This topic is personal for me because Leadovation was originally called The Business of Intuition, inspired by my TEDx talk on the same subject. And while the podcast has since evolved, intuition remains the through line in everything we talk about. Maurice brings decades of experience helping leaders tap into their inner knowing, and in our discussion, we explore many things, such as what intuition really is, beyond the noise, the woo-woo definitions, and the doubt, how leaders can balance inner wisdom with external data, especially in high-stakes environments, why intuition even matters at all, more or less, in the age of AI, offering what algorithms can't, meaning context and human insight, how to develop trust in your intuitive voice, and why doing so can transform how you lead and live. Maurice, as I said, is the founder of the Intuitive Leader, a training and development and consultancy firm in Sweden. And he's also the host of a podcast that I'm going to be on here shortly called The Intuitive Leader. Maurice Jenkens on the Leadovation podcast. So Maurice, I'm really delighted to have you on this show. As you know, and I think maybe some people know, that originally, Leadovation was called The Business of Intuition because of a fascination around the topic that you and I are going to get into. And that was inspired by a TEDx talk that I did maybe 4.5 years ago on that very topic. Since then, this podcast has sort of expanded its scope a bit, but intuition is still a backbone of a lot of what I think about and a lot of what we talk about. And I was so delighted that you and I crossed paths because from your side of the pond, you're very into intuition. You've got a business that's built around it. So maybe we could start by definitions. What does intuition mean to you?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It's actually great that you reached out to me and that we can do this. And I'm based in Sweden. That's the other side of the pond.
Yes, big
and,
side.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, my company is called Intuitive Leader. So yeah, that is the basis of my business. And well, actually, the definition of intuition that I use is simply inner knowing. So a sense of inner knowing. And it's a little bit derived from another definition that has been used by so many other scholars, if you like: felt knowledge, or felt knowing, or direct knowing, or knowing without knowing. But as you know, there are so many people and so many definitions going around, and there may even be like opposites in terms of scholars and people that think, no, intuition is a divine entity, and others say, no, it's experience only. And for me, it doesn't really matter where you come from in terms of what you believe the source is, or for me, it's much more important to understand, what does intuition want me? What is it telling me? What information has it for me? And in order to know that, you have to sort of make sense of it all. And the sense making of what your intuitive intelligence is trying to tell you that actual progress, that actual moment, like a process almost, that's what I call decoding intuition. So it's another word for it will really be like debiasing. So instead of being either very impulsive and believing you are intuitive, whereas it's almost only lust or instinct or fear or fantasy or any form of blind spot, or the other way around. If you think you're highly intuitive, you believe intuition has information for you, but you're not acting on it, then you're actually not trusting yourself enough. That's also a part of the blind spot. In both cases, we need to understand, wait a minute, what is intuition? What's my intuitive resonance? What is my intuition really? And what's not? What's fear? What's fantasy? And in the end, it comes down to what is it? What do I know? What can I trust that I know? And that inner knowing, that moment that you truly know something, that for me is the moment where I want my customers to get to. That's what I want to help them with. Oh.
You said something that kind of caught my attention here, Maurice, when you said trusting what I know. That's a fascinating, it sounds sort of obvious, but you have non-intuitive thinking people, and I think everybody has intuition. It's the degree to which you're aware of it, but would want to analyze, like, what is it really? What part of the brain does it come from? Does it have a language and so forth? I got into this texting, emailing conversation with Chip Conley, and he was asking me, what is intuition relative to wisdom? How do you define the difference between that? We had this wonderful kind of back and forth, and so I guess when it comes back down to that trusting, there was an experience I had and want to get your thoughts on. So I was in a workshop again with Chip Conley, and there was this question about the calling reference that you would find when it comes to the hero's journey. When you decide something has evoked this desire for some sort of change, and if you Joseph Campbell's work on this particular philosophy would say you got a call, you need to answer it, and there's obviously so many different references in art and literature about that happening to our hero, whoever that might be, or heroine. So then the question, like, well, when did you know that, about the calling? And I was asking myself the question, like, well, where did this source come from? Who's making the call?
That's a very good question.
What's on the other side of the phone line? And so I was thinking, like, if it's my own inner intellectual knowledge, I don't trust that as much as if it were my intuition. So speak more to this idea about the trust of knowing and why that's important and why we don't.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So it's trust and knowing, and also the calling. You spoke about the calling, and you know that the Latin word for intuition really means being taught from within. So someone or something is teaching you from within, and I don't know who that is. I just believe it's intuition itself that is learning or something. That information and intuition wants to inform us. That's the thing. It is information. It's like an email with information. And either you do something with it or you don't. And the trust part, we can start there, then I can take the calling. The trust part is really about, do I know this is my intuition? So if someone is truly in touch with its own resonance signature, and it's a specific signature, a specific resonance, it's not fear, it's not fantasy, it's not a logical mind activity. There's a specific sense to it, but it's not the same for everybody. I have one sense. Some of my clients have different ways of getting into touch with their intuition, and the moment the moment is clear to you, this is how an intuitive hit feels for me, or this is what it is. This is how I get aware of this is my intuition. Then you can differentiate it from fear and fantasy. It's not to say though that you can't be afraid for something, because it's actually intuition. If you're on the mark, if you're on the spot, if you have this little Well, actually, to give you an idea, the people that play harp, those nice strings that the harp is being made of,
Oh,
these
harp. Yeah.
the harp, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every string, it has a specific sound to it, and it's also one of those strings we have within us. That's how I usually picture it, and that string gives a certain resonance. If it's being touched, let's call it intuitive string, like a silver cord running straight through us. And the moment that resonates, it is a specific, well, some people hear something, some people get an inner vision, others get a word, but there's a feeling to it, a sense.
Yeah.
And once you have identified that sense, it is clearer. Whereas normal fear or normal fantasy is something else. And the moment intuition pulls you towards something, probably out of your comfort zone, most likely, it either saves you from something, like it informs you to don't do that, this feels off, don't hire that person, don't start that company, don't invest here, there's the danger. It either stops you, if you like, but it can also pull you towards something. And the moment it pulls you towards something, it is most likely out of your comfort zone. And that is scary.
Mm.
Yet there is this intuitive calling, if you like. Now we are with the calling. So if something keeps pulling you, if something keeps drawing you towards something all your life, as a child, as a youngster, as a young adult, as a grown-up man, 50, 60-year-old, still haven't done it yet. It doesn't leave you alone. You'll be sure that it is your intuition calling you. So, and that is how it has been for me.
I would agree with you, and there is an implicit message that you're saying that the intuitive voice, the intuitive knowing, has a greater value than the non-intuitive knowing.
Yes, I would
Are
say
we
so.
making
Yeah.
are we making a judgment here? Like, all right, so I've got 5 pounds of intellectual knowing and 5 pounds of intuitive knowing. Which one's more important, right? And I think we're sort of indicating that there is something, no matter wherever it comes from. I think you're making the point that you're not as concerned as the source, whereas I get sometimes you can almost go into divine knowledge, all the knowledge beyond ourselves. You start getting into conversation around destiny. You can get into different levels of consciousness. You can get into God. You can get into all sorts of stuff on this, right? But when it comes back down to it, Maurice says, "Hey, this is a knowing that you should pay attention to," and
Yes.
and it could scare the crap out of you. Not the knowing part, but the decision to do something part. Am I following you on that?
Oh, yeah, that was well put. Very well put. Yes, absolutely.
So, Maurice, why intuition, man? I mean, like, you're a smart guy. There's a ton of things out there to do. I mean, what was it that got you going down this path versus all the other billions of paths you could have gone down? What
Well,
happened?
it is my calling. That is sort of the short answer. I am the intuitive leader. It's the name of my company, but it's really me. I am the intuitive leader, and I've always been it. How far back in time do we need to go with this answer?
Would you
There's a
like
lot
to
to
lay
say.
down on the couch?
Yes, and a napkin and maybe
Yeah, right.
cry a little. But
Yeah.
I'm going to give you like the very fast version of it. As a child, highly intuitive, and I was aware of it as well. So the connection with my intuitive silver cord in me, the harp string, that
Yeah.
was there all the time. During my young adult years, I studied at the university. I grew up in a very rational world, academics. My logical mind sort of took over. My intuitive mind got pushed back, and just about everyone in my environment was highly logical, and this thing with intuition wasn't really accepted, and nobody spoke about it really. So it sort of got pushed away. And then at 28, I crashed a burnout, and a serious one. And it took me a very, very long time to get back on my feet. And during those years, I was forced to look inside again. I was forced to
Mm.
actually reconnect with myself. And that took years to come back to a level where my brains were functioning normal again, where my body was sort of relaxing again. My nervous system was damaged so badly. It took years before I could sit behind a computer again and actually, do office work. Um, but after that, I sort of started to find my way back into who am I? What do I want to do with my life? And this calling, what I'm doing now, has always been with me and it sort of resurfaced again after my
Mm.
crash. I didn't know exactly how, but I did understand that there's something here. I need to work with this. This is
Mm.
my direction in life, my purpose. And I ended up in sales. I've worked 22, 23 years in corporate sales. And during my years in sales, although it's a rational profession, by the way, you need to analyze data constantly. But still, reading the room, the art of reading the room is crucial.
Mm.
So all of a sudden, my intuitive mind got really happy in this fast-paced, KPI-driven sales world. All of a sudden, intuitive intelligence got really appreciated because I could handle difficult customers. I could see if something was off. I could react live during the meeting. I could pull people out. And that, I didn't see it immediately that I had that gift, but
Mm.
all of a sudden it became clear to me. And then I quit my job in 2018, and started my own company within sales coaching based on this, basically emotional intelligence for salespeople. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't. I didn't feel satisfied yet. And what I'm doing now feels a lot better. So now I am actually sort of, well, I'm taking the core, the essence of reading the room, and repackage that in terms of what it really is. It is intuition. It is intuitive intelligence live in action. And I connect that to what it is that my calling is. And that is helping other people find their calling, to be
Mm.
on the mark in terms of that inner resonance signature. If I can bring people to that point, they will then bring themselves further on into the right direction. So basically, you ask me why intuition. Well, it has always been there. It has not been leaving me alone. With the exception of the years that I was so highly in my logical mind that I crashed because my whole nervous system was objecting. I had sort of tucked myself away. And with the exception of those years, intuition has been pulling on me constantly. So basically, it is my calling.
Was the crash in part your distance from your intuition?
Yes, because I completely overruled myself. So you have to see it as,
Overruled?
yeah,
Did you
I
say
overruled.
overruled? Okay.
Yes, yeah. I overruled my own inner knowing. I didn't listen to my body. I didn't listen to if I was sad. I was just confused, angry, upset, stressed out, and basically didn't listen to the clues. So it's sort of an airplane in the middle of the air, and all alarm bells are going off. No fuel, no oil, no oxygen. Everything is bad, but we keep flying. We don't
Mm.
pay attention. At some point, you crash. That was me. Mm.
So I'm sure as uncomfortable and difficult that crash was, it was probably in hindsight a huge gift.
Yes, it is absolutely right. And I didn't see it then. Then I thought it was like the biggest catastrophe in my life. I didn't see a way back, basically.
Yeah.
But today, I'm 50 today. I was 28 then. So now, 22 years later, this is exactly what I say. This is the best thing that could have happened to me because it forced me back on my, well, path, if you like, of my intuitive calling.
I love this topic. I'm also curious about, I keep coming up with this in conversations with people around. They've told me about, a crash, a big setback, and it was the setback, it was the crash that gave them the time to finally reflect and to get reconnected to themselves, and then a new path emerges. And I have to say that I've had a similar, situation when I was much younger. I would call it a crash, and the awakening that came from that was extremely profound. But I always wonder, like, do we have to go through a crash to be able to get to knowledge? I mean, does intuition have to go through hell in order for it to be this sort of divine aha? Or can we build some practices within our lives that allow us to tap into intuition? I suppose because then our job would be is to force people into a crash. Ergo, then we will be there. It's almost like an ambulance chaser. We have that term in the United States. I'm not sure whether you do that in Sweden, where you've got these lawyers who are running around in following ambulances because when they finally get to the hospital, they can be there to help them with their claim. We could be almost like, we could do that. We could help people get to the point where they crash, and then we're there on the other side to help them out, right? Now that you finally have the desire, the need, the motivation, the inspiration to do something different in your life, now is the time to do it. So the flip side of that, I mean, that sounds awful. That sounds, crazy to have that. But is there, on the flip side, a way that we can help these people, ourselves included, because we're the student as well, to make these interconnections, to find that right heart, string that you're talking about, that resonance, without having to go through hell to get there?
Yes, there is. If it's a scenario, right? But if I would have had a different kind of upbringing, or a different kind of setting, people I grew up with, or people that surrounded me, that would have introduced me to a more structured way of tapping into self, or approving this, or confirming this, just making it normal. For me, this is so normal. So I pass it on to my child in a normal, earthy way.
Yeah.
That it just becomes no. I ask him, what's your gut telling you? So I want him to check in once in a while. And I'm not sure if I can prevent people from a burnout, because there's so many factors, and I can't be everywhere at the same time. And if they had a burnout, then they probably need to recover for a couple of years and find themselves again. Mm-hmm. So I help them when they're sort of stuck in life in terms of, what should I do now with my life? Or I have difficulties in my relationships, or for some reason I always bounce into the same wall, into the same problem. So basically, people are stuck and don't see it when they need clarity, and I help them with that. And it's just a daily practice that I do, that I know helps others as well, is every morning. If you're a morning person, if you're an early bird like me, that works. If you are a late, I don't know how to say that in English, but if you're up late instead, then you do it before you go to bed. But I journal. So every morning I have a big fat cup of coffee, pen and paper, old-fashioned pen and paper, and I do meditative writing. But basically I ask myself questions like, well, what is it that I want to do today? Or what is it that my intuition tells me is most important today? Or if I'm stressed out, if I wake up stressed, I ask myself, like, why am I stressed? What's bothering me? And basically, sometimes something needs to get out. I need to just write down 5 topics that are really stressing me out. And the moment I've written them down and look at them and ask myself, is this for now, for today, for tomorrow? Sort of staying strategic in it, my nervous system calms down. Yeah. The moment I skip this, my meditative mornings, I feel the day has never started, and I'm unorganized, I'm chaotic. And to be honest, this is actually one of the feedbacks that I've gotten from my clients, that if you work with intuition on a daily basis, it's easier to remain strategic in chaotic times. So we can do the mindfulness thing, we can do sit and meditate, we can, I don't know, go to an ashram if needed. And I do meditate as well, but I have certain moments of awareness during the day, and that can be 1 minute, just breathe, exhale slowly, like a balloon that leaves air very slowly. Or Well, basically becoming aware, just aware. Look at one thing in a forest, at a tree, for example. Look at that for 1 minute and just exclude everything else. It will calm down the nervous system as well. So basically, we don't need to sit an hour and meditate. But for me, it's every morning, and it's the best thing I do on the whole day. That's the high point of my day. It's me, myself, and I, and my intuition.
And your cup of coffee, by the way.
I'm a big fat cup of coffee.
You're
Yes.
big.
Yeah.
We're very similar. You just described a lot of my mornings, not all the time, but that's always a better day when I do what you just said. All right, so let's say that you got this practice now. You've got this business called the Intuitive Leader, correct?
Yes.
How do you engage with people? Because I think about, all right, we're speaking to the choir. You and I can go out and have a beer somewhere, and we could talk about this for a long, long time, and
Yeah.
we would just continue to elevate the conversation. We get a higher tone. It would just like we would be like high-fiving each other, and we're like, we get it, I got it. And it's not to say that others don't, but it's just like this is our jam. We love this stuff. Somebody's listening in on this and going like, Dean, I don't know, Maurice, I don't know. You guys look like nice guys, but I think I'm intuitive, but I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to trust it. I don't even know where it is. I mean, you talk about this journaling thing. Sounds like a good idea. When am I going to find my intuition there? And how do I know what's intuition and what's not? And how do I make the practice of intuitive knowing besides my journaling that you just described? And how do I trust it? And I guess that's my first question. My second question is, how do I bring it into the world? Like I think about businesses with respect to decision making, and we often find ourselves hearing we're going to make decisions based on facts and information. Evidence-based decision making. That's the big buzz we often find in the United States. We have a lot of things that are based on that. But then you got somebody in the back of the room who goes like, I don't know, this may be coming out of the left field, but I intuitively feel that the direction of the CEO or wherever we're heading might be incorrect. How do we give the intuitive voice credibility when it feels like woo-woo?
Yes. Well, there are different approaches. I can start out with saying that let's say that 99% of every moment we live is being stored in our subconsciousness, where it is being stored for later use. So it's less than 1% that actually gets into our consciousness. So we aren't cognitively aware. It's not even 0.5%, but we are constantly soaking up signals, experiences, and drawing conclusions from that. It's being stored for later use in our subconsciousness, just like we store fat, if you like. The moment it is useful, it pops up again, but it is not coming up in terms of words or numbers or logic. It comes up with hunches. That's the language it uses. Subconsciousness uses a different kind of language. It can be feelings, it can be dreams, it can be a hunch, it can be just a sense, or that doesn't feel right. And you can ignore it. And it's like an email. You can ignore it, or you can actually open it. And I would like to refer to a Portuguese American neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio. You may have heard of him. It's a fantastic person. He has done research to people with brain damage that don't have the ability to use the amygdala. They don't have the ability to use emotional intelligence. And the conclusion from his work is that people that can't use the amygdala, they can still think logically, they can still do analysis, but they can't make decisions. They lose the ability to make a decision.
Without the amygdala?
Without the amygdala, yes.
Okay,
because
I'm tracking.
Yeah, okay, because emotions, they paint or taint events in our brains. So without emotions, there's like everything is gray and there's no difference. It's all the same. You do your analysis, but you can't make a judgment call on it. It's the emotions and the feelings that create the context needed to make the decisions. And that is, his work is absolutely famous. So if you, Antonio Damasio is his name. So feelings are absolutely necessary. And they work like an email. So the body sends you a signal. It's actually an emotion first. If you don't listen, which is probably the case because emotions aren't accessible that easily, the body creates a feeling. A feeling is basically an emotion, but made stronger. That feeling is the email, and that is where the information is. But we have to open it. We have to dare to listen to the feeling. That doesn't mean, though, that we ignore data. I mean, I'm coming from the sales background.
Yeah.
I've been analyzing HubSpot and Salesforce data God knows how many times. And obviously, I listen to that. It's not that I ignore the data. But at some point, you have to make a decision. For example, are we going to work on this foreign market? Are we going to do that from here? Or are we going to open a local office? What do the numbers say? What's better? At some point, you don't know. And I'm going to refer to an American called Gary Klein, The Power of Intuition. Yes.
Yeah,
So
I
he
know the
explains
book.
it so eloquently. Like,
Yeah.
how do you know you have all data? How do you know you have the right data? How do you know that this data we're going to use and that data we're going to ignore? There are like a zillion micro decisions we are using until there comes to a point that we put it all in a computer or AI nowadays and we have a spreadsheet or a conclusion or something. And that's fine. But still, the data isn't just by itself. It is put together by us humans.
But you're mentioning something, Maurice, that I think is important, is that the feelings that are overlaying all of this data, which one could attribute to intuition in some way, shape, or form, maybe in some cases, is the context.
Yeah.
Am I correct the way you see this as well, that the feeling creates the context by which the data has relevance, and therefore we can make the decision? Without the context in a decision-making process, we've lost something extremely important.
Yes. Yeah. And Warren Buffett, he explains this. He's quoted on this, and I saved this quote because it's Warren Buffett.
Yes.
He does his due diligence about management teams.
Yeah.
And he has said that even if everything looks fantastic, even if it's all green, let's go and invest. The numbers are great. If he has a bad feeling about it, if he has a bad gut feeling about it, he walks away.
So there's something I really want people to listen to what he just said, Maurice, you just said, because I want you, like, everybody think about a time when your intuition, your gut told you something, and yet you waited for enough data in the physical world to legitimize what you already knew, and how long that took in order to get that. So I was just literally last week talking to a CEO of an organization, and she has a person on her team that we were talking about the data, the kind of results this person was getting or not getting. And I finally just said, what does your intuition say about this person? And we both agreed that they were not a good fit for the team. And I said, the question then is, are you going to be able to trust that and make a decision now to be able to take action relative to that decision? Or are you going to wait another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 months for enough evidence to legitimize what you already know? And how long does that take? And what kind of cost does it give? And what sort of credibility do you lose? And what does the rest of the team feel about you when you don't make the decision that we already know? You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, there you have it, self-trust.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So you mentioned AI, the big 2-letter acronym that has sort of encroached upon our lives and is changing the way the world is seemingly, becoming. I have a perspective that obviously AI is extremely useful. My God, what have we found in terms of the productivity benefits in our little company? It's been astronomical. And yet I do wonder if intuition is the last final frontier. This sounds like a Star Trek episode of humanity. of true humanity, meaning that this is where the unAIable characteristics of human beings cannot be replicated. You cannot
Yeah.
have that context, the way the emotion, that sixth sense, the subconscious that's been storing up all this fat that you said that will be used at some point in the future will need to come into play. What's your sense about that?
Well, yeah, I love the way you introduce it. It's really, yeah, it's up my alley, and I believe that AI is in. I mean, as always, technique can be used for or against us. You know, just like
Right.
atomics. But I believe it has really the seed of being our biggest friend in terms of pushing us towards the cliff, if you like. That we are not humans made to do repetitive work. We are not made to do work that is cognitively draining and doesn't really add that much. Let AI do it. What remains is consciousness, awareness, presence, and intuitive intelligence, understanding who we are and what we, and making the right kind of judgment calls. Because the more the more we grow as humans, personal growth, personal understanding, self insight, self growth, all that, the more we do that, the better decisions we are about to make. The people that don't have that much self awareness, self knowledge, cultural baggage, if you like, they're probably going to make the wrong decisions. They're still learning, if you like, what's what's right. So I believe that AI can mimic intuitive intelligence or emotional intelligence very well. I believe we are going to see robotic kinds of people that would be fantastic coaches in the sense that they would ask the right questions.
Right.
They probably have an algorithm that teaches them how to read the eyes, read the room, tonality. Okay, I see you a little bit sad now. What is that?
Uh-huh.
I think you can get a long way with that. Actually, I think we're
Yeah.
gonna have AI steered coaches that are doing a very good job. But it comes to a certain point. We humans have the possibility to raise our awareness, the way Einstein explained it, to solve all problems with a higher level of consciousness. We can do that. We can actually raise awareness because we have consciousness. We are sentient. And it's my belief, but there are tech people that don't agree with me, but that's fine. I don't believe AI is or will be sentient. It will be able to mimic it. That's what I believe. But I can't prove it, of course. I can't see the
Right.
future. But I believe we are sentient, AI isn't, and that's where the competitive edge is for us humans.
It's a great question too, because because I don't know how to put this up because there's so many thoughts running in my head because of what you just said, Maurice. So just because AI can do something as well as maybe a human can do, say it's a version of what you might call as close to a technical aspect of AI as possible, as intuition as you could, doesn't necessarily mean that you should do it. Like here's the context. So we had some people over for dinner a while back, and she runs this theater company, right? And so we were talking about the mission behind theater and what she's all about, and she was saying it's so important that the actors get the experience of being in these plays. And I'm going, God, I get it. I've been an actor. I understand that.
Mm.
And in my mind, she was sort of taking out the experience of the audience. And it to me, and I said, is your mission about serving your audience, or is your mission about serving your actors? In some ways, in my mind, she was slanted more towards the actors, right? So then I think, okay, what the hell, Dean, are you talking about relative to this conversation that you and I are having? Is it about the outcome that we're trying to create, analogous to what the experience is of the audience in this particular story? Or is it the fact that it came from human beings? Like an actor can say a line, or an AI thing could say a line, but we want to hold sacred and violet because it came from a human being, even though an AI could maybe do it as good or better than us. Do we carve out certain things that are just human, just because it is human, because it comes from us? Or we say, nope, sorry, we should just get rid of anything that AI can do better?
Good question. In the end, I want to connect. That's my why here as well. So the community, the intuitive leader community, is there for I want to connect with other people, other intuitive leaders, and that human connection you feel. And of course, I mean, in a couple of years, there will be an avatar Dean, an avatar Maurice. We'll look like we look. We talk like us. They're already are alive now, I guess.
Right.
And you could mimic it to the extent that you may not even see the difference. But I would like to connect with a real human of flesh and blood, and it's the feeling, it's when those mirror neurons are being fired off. If we feel each other's energies, if we in each other's presence, that's reading the room, that's reading the air, that's feeling each other's presence. It's not woo-woo. Just go and stand next to someone you really love. That's a different feeling than go and stand next to someone that you really hate. Both are the experiences that you that you have, and you won't have that with a robot.
I think, as I come full circle with you, Maurice, some of your original comments were about helping people identify, what was the word, my friend? It wasn't calling.
The purpose, true meaning, inner resonance.
See, I think that if you continue to go back to context, that's your context. It happens to be my context as well. And wherever AI fits into all that, fine, so long as we stay focused on the prize, which is about this calling, this higher purpose that we have. And I do believe, and I love your analogy and your connection about connection, how important that is, right? Yeah. Even though we can, in a sense, fall in love with bots, even though we've got that movie out that came out, what was it, 15 years ago, called Her, where the guy actually has a relationship with his bot assistant, and then the bot assistant ends up rejecting him for other bots. Or I just had a guy in my podcast recently who was talking about how there's a company now that is working with people who've gone through some pretty tough psychological loss, and they're not able to get back engaged, at least by some people's analysis, real human connections, because they're afraid of the consequence if they lose another person in their life, right? So let's give them an avatar boyfriend, an avatar girlfriend that gets them to start taking those initial connections and those initial steps towards being able to talk about what they've been going through, their history, their trauma, and that the hope is that will lead them to real human connections. Well, is that really true? Or can people simply say that's as far as I ever go? Now, again, going back to your story, it's all about your highest and best purpose and about connection. And I think that, I agree with you. It's like whatever your purpose is, you go for that. That's what we're all about. I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And the word authenticity comes to mind as well. As you're living your life in authenticity. You're living the life you really want to live and dare to live. It's not just trust your gut. It's actually follow your gut. And it's fascinating there with avatar boyfriends, and I can really see the almost like a medical use of it. I get it.
Yeah.
And I wish him well, but I am not. It's not my. I see it. Yeah. I get it, but I don't. When I hear that, I see the Matrix in front of me, where people are just being hooked up. Yeah, it's. We should stay real. That's my strong opinion. Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing. Like collectively as a species and individually as people, we are having to make the decision. Like you said, is AI pushing us off the cliff? Are we having our own existential breakdown that you kind of said that you went through?
That's a good one.
Are we pushing ourselves to that point where they really go, holy crap, what is my life all about? Because if I don't decide what it is, some goddamn little bot's going to decide it for me, or the government's going to decide it for me, or whatever other thing we might put in there. It's up to me to decide. Self-will, self-determination.
Yeah, exactly. And then hopefully that self-will is not based on impulsiveness or fear, but based on something that on real gut feeling.
Right.
But I really like your analogy there. I mean, I had a crash. You had many people here on your show that had a crash. You had your
Shh, I've
crash.
had my crash. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, why do people crash? Because they don't listen in the end. I mean, they have to crash almost before they wake up to the signals, and maybe that's where we are really at with humanity. We are about to crash. Most likely, I mean, I don't want to be a pessimistic guy, but most likely we are crashing for that reason.
So that's great because God, there's so many things. I'm sure that you can call back in your memory, Maurice, the time when you would reflect on your crash and go, I knew this and I didn't follow it. I heard
Yes.
it and I didn't
Mm,
listen to it. I felt it
mm,
and I didn't take action on it. And I did too. I have stories that I could share with you around when I knew that I was going down the wrong path. And then obviously my crash ended up happening. What I would say is from our both analogies that we're talking about is that, all right, let's assume that this is our lives are a microcosm of society's lives, right? We're being pushed to the edge and we're having to like make some decisions here. Therefore, all of us right now are hearing things that sometimes we're paying attention to and sometimes we're not.
mm.
And can we now then pay more attention to what's already there instead of getting to the crash?
Yeah, yeah, that's a very that was now we are really, yeah, absolutely, you're right. And the signals are there for sure they are there.
Yeah.
And I only have to look at my life even after that crash. God knows how many times I was at work knowing this is not going to work. It's the wrong decision, the wrong person, the wrong project to invest in, the wrong market. And I'm not talking about offshore wind projects, huge amounts of money. I knew it wouldn't work, but I wasn't feeling enough levels of self-trust to actually stand up for that opinion and make the case. And that is probably where a lot of people are right now at. They know something is wrong, they know it's not right, they know we're going to the wrong direction, but they don't have enough proof yet to stand up and say this is not right, we should do something else. Yeah.
Or if I think about what you just said, that they don't have enough proof. Maybe it's that they haven't leaned into what that voice is trying to tell them out of fear that it will require some decisions to disrupt their life's apple cart. I got to get
Yes.
a divorce. I have to get a new job. I have to move my house and my family, or I have to confront that person, or whatever the other issues are. It could be hundreds of thousands of things that might come up, but my gut, my intuition knows something, and I'm afraid to take action on it. And I think
You're
that there's yeah, go ahead. Sorry, my friend.
Yeah, you're very right. You're very right. And this is really where intuition pulls you out of your comfort zone. You
Yeah.
have the choice. You take the red pill or you take the blue pill, whatever it was now
Thank you,
in
Morpheus.
Matrix. Yeah.
Well, and I think though that I have conversations with my wonderful boy about this, my son who's 25 almost, and the same sort of conversations with clients is that don't worry about the how yet.
Hmm.
That'll
Hmm.
come. Just find your intuitive voice, listen to it, trust it, and if it turns you to a decision, then make the decision. Work on what to do with it later. Bifurcate the knowing and the action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just imagine, I don't know how you grew up, but just imagine that I had that. What if my dad would have said that to me when I was younger? Go
Right.
with your guts. Or what does your intuition tell you? Or even if the word intuition was not his vocabulary, but gut maybe, or stomach
Yeah.
feeling, like look inside basically
Yeah.
and find your voice, as you say. That what if we could help youngsters use that, not
Yeah.
just sit at school and learn dates like the French Revolution, the American Revolution,
Right.
the Communist Revolution, whatever,
Right.
all those dates that we can Google. What if we also would help people understand you have actually emotional intelligence? You have felt knowing. So, what does your felt knowing tell you about this situation? Just that question alone. Why don't we do anything like that with our kids?
It'd be interesting,
Uh,
I all of a sudden I see a book, Maurice, maybe we should write it together at some point where we basically just tell the story of intuition. When
yeah.
did an intuitive knowledge come to somebody, and what decision did they make as a result of it? And look at some big companies, people that we know, and I've studied some of this. You studied some of this, but it's like a cookbook of all of these different intuitive decisions that changed history, that made a difference of these companies that prevented whatever could have happened, and we think that the revisionist history says, well, data says that we had to make the right decision, blah, 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 blah. But no, ladies and gentlemen, behind door number 2, actually, they made the decision based on intuition. They used data as their friend, but they didn't rely solely on it.
Yeah. Of course. And you're going to be on my podcast too. And one question that
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you can already know that I always ask the same. Well, some questions are always the same, and some of those questions are like, what was the last time you went against your intuition? How did that go? And how did it feel to go against your intuition? And I can tell you that if, the other ones that have been on my podcast, they answered almost always something like, it didn't go well and it felt like self-betrayal.
Right. That's a great way. Well, listen, I'm going to end us on that point because I could talk with you for a long time. And I know we've got another podcast where we're going to switch roles and I'm going to be on yours, and I can't wait for that. Great conversation, Maurice. And
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Man, when I found you, I don't know how we connected. I just sort of like, you were in a feed or something, went, I got to talk to this dude because he's onto something. So I'm so glad we did this. How can people follow you, your company, whatever you're about, books? Just give us a little bit of background on how people can connect.
Yeah, so if people want to connect with me personally, go to my LinkedIn page, Maurice Jenkens. Then you will find me there. And as said, I have a podcast. You will find it at my website. So it's intuitiveleader.net. And then you'll find their podcast, community, as well as Decoding into Intuition. So it's and free webinars as well. So if anybody is interested in more of this stuff, then there is a lot more of it. Yeah.
All right. And I'm looking forward to our conversation when I get to be on your podcast. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has just been great.
Yes. Thank you, Dean. And let's do it again.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.